Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. I am pretty excited for today, actually. I have been rereading a book that I read many, many years ago and just being reminded of some new things that are just absolutely essential for our growth and progression. And so I'm excited to share them with you from the bottom of my heart. It really does go perfectly in alignment with my message of Fuel Your Legacy and the idea of intentionally creating a legacy. Intentionally creating a legacy is so important. And so the book today that we're doing a book review on is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. I will show you a copy of that book just because it's one of the classics here. You can get that pretty much online anywhere. You can get it in audio form. You can get it on actual Amazon in hard copy, soft copy, ebook, Kindle, and you can get this book anywhere because it's one of the foundational business books and personal development books on how to become a leader. Now, with this, I'm going to focus on a few different things, and I'm going to spend a lot of time purely focused on habit number 2, which is beginning with the end in mind. Okay, so I do want to give you a brief overview. This Stephen R. Covey is just a phenomenal speaker. He created a dynasty a lot like people that I would say are Bob Proctor, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, these people who have just created a massive movement. They've left behind an incredible legacy. Napoleon Hill's another one, Think and Grow Rich Foundation. Basically, these people who were able to create something out of their life that's lasting multiple generations. He's a highly influential individual who has passed away as of now, but his foundations, everything is still run. You still have a lot of books that are coming out, like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in different formats for teens, for kids, for different generations, and they get updated as well regularly. So if you haven't ever read this book, go pick up the book in one of the many forms and read it. I think it's wise to always have a book, a hard copy or a soft copy, something like that, where you can actually make edits and notes. Although audiobooks are good, with a really good book, you want to make some notes so you can always remember things, have some quotable lines that you can implement into your life. So go ahead and make a mental note or a personal note of that. You may be listening to this in the car, driving, whatever the case may be. Go make a note of that and then get access to this book somehow. You probably even get it from your library. I can't imagine you couldn't. But it's just a life-changing book. Again, you can go to my website, samknickerbocker.com, and also on there's some links to my Facebook page, Facebook reading groups, the Fuel Your Legacy reading group. If you go and look that up on Facebook, you'll be able to find that. Catch me on Instagram. I post fairly regularly about the different things I'm doing, different things I'm learning, and experiences that I've been having. I just love everything about what I do. Everything is just great in my life. Everything's fantastic. So I want to share a little bit about how that is, how that came to be, and principles that I applied it. I didn't recognize that a lot of my philosophies are either in alignment or came from, I'm not sure which, Stephen R. Covey and the principles he teaches. So the 7 habits of highly effective people. Let's talk about what are the 7 habits so we can actually get some clarity on what each one is and what they are. So habit number 1 is be proactive. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But be proactive, habit number 1. Habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. Habit number 3, put first things first. So prioritize your time. And then habit number 4 is think win-win. Making sure that you're always thinking of how can each person win out of a situation, not a winner and a loser, not a loser and a loser, but how can you get what you want and I get what I want, and we can think win-win. Habit number 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. You need to learn to listen more. Honestly, in our culture, we don't listen a lot. I find myself falling into this often. I really like to talk, if you haven't noticed, which is a large part of why I do a podcast, because I like talking. But it's a struggle for me, and it's a constant practice for me when I do the interview podcast to just listen to what my guest has to say rather than always interjecting my own opinion. So that's something that I'm working on. I'd love your feedback to let me know how I'm doing, whether it's in a personal conversation that you had with me or as you're giving me feedback from my various podcasts, interviewed podcasts. Let me know how I'm doing at listening versus sharing my own opinion of things. Habit number 6 is to synergize. Make sure that you're understanding cooperation, you're involving other people in your life, you're involving other people in your dream, which as well is going to play a huge role in when I start talking about specifically how to fuel your legacy, the habits, mindsets, and behaviors. And then number 7 is to sharpen your saw. Some people will get to a certain point in their life and they think, oh, I've arrived finally. I've finally had a little bit of success. I've made my first $1 million. I've had 6 kids. I've got married. I've graduated college. Whatever it is, you think you've arrived, but in reality, you haven't arrived anywhere. I mean, you just barely started the journey. By the time you think you've arrived, you already are falling behind the people who are still out there hustling. They're still out there working, crushing, just doing everything they can to become better people, okay? And I'm not always talking about people who are out there killing it in business or killing it in family or whatever, right? I'm talking about individuals who have a focus of bettering their own lives and bettering themselves. And that's key, especially with this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He's not saying this as a judgment of saying, oh, everybody else should be doing X, Y, and Z. He's saying it as, hey, look, the people who are the most successful in life, the people who have achieved the highest levels of success, these are habits that they have, ways that they think, people they've become, behaviors that they engage in, mindsets. And if you like to join that class of people, there's plenty of room at the top. That's really what this book is about, is just inviting people to that perspective and to that light. And so just please take it from that perspective as I share my thoughts from what I gained from this book. Really focus on, okay, how could I implement some of these things more into my life? This Friday, we're going to have a guest. Her name is Lori Hybe, and this is a book that she recommended as one of her best books that has helped her become a master networker, master social media expert, really killing it in her industry because she applies these rules. And number 1 that she applies is begin with the end in mind, habit number 2. And so that is something we both have in common a ton, and so that's why we're going to cover it today in more detail. But one of the things that he says very early on the book is, it is impossible to break the law. You can only break yourself on the law. Okay, and I think this is an important distinction. People think, oh, well, somebody else put this law in place and I'm going to break it. I'm so excited. I'm going to do something that's against the rules, against the grain, against whatever. There's certain laws, natural law, gravity, love. There's certain things that are universal. Okay, there's no way for you to break the law of love. There's no way for you to break the law of gravity. You can use the law of gravity, which is a centrifugal force, a force type thing. And by using gravity, understanding the law, you can now create rockets, different things, kites, swing, whatever. You can use different things. You can use the law to create different things that would make it appear as though you're breaking the law of gravity. Okay, you can create a hoverboard that would say, oh, I'm hovering. Well, guess what? You're just applying the law of gravity, and you're applying different factors to make the law of gravity work in your favor. But you're not changing the law of gravity. If you try to break the law of gravity, let's say you'll jump off a building and you think, I'm going to break the law of gravity. Nothing's going to stop me. Well, if you try and do that, you're probably going to land on the ground. I've never known anybody who doesn't land on the ground when they do this, or land on something. And if they have tried to do it without any safety precautions, without anything to slow their fall down, they're probably going to die. And that's because you're going to break yourself on the law, not break the law. Okay, so just it's a simple distinction, but even think about it in traffic rules. If you're going to go break the law doesn't change just because you decide to speed. The law changes not at all. But what does change? You potentially get pulled over and you get a ticket. You get the damaging effects of breaking the law. right? Breaking yourself on the law. And I think that's an important distinction because it helps you put in perspective, my actions, are they helping me or serving me? Am I operating in accordance with law or not? If I'm experiencing something that I don't enjoy, if I'm experiencing sadness, if I'm experiencing sorrow, if I'm experiencing pain, that's because I'm breaking a law. There's a scripture that I love. I grew up quoting it. But it says there's a law irrevocably decreed in heaven upon which all blessings are predicated. And anytime somebody receives a blessing, it's through obedience to the law upon which those blessings were predicated. Okay, so it's so important to understand that if you're being blessed, it's because you're obeying a law. If you're not being blessed, it's because you're not obeying a law. And these laws aren't like we don't have any control of them, and nobody else does either. They're just natural law. And in my opinion, from a religious perspective, because this will come up, and they're like, no, God creates laws. I think God abides by laws. He gives us direction in what the laws are to abide by. I do not, and this is my personal opinion, I do not believe that God creates laws. I believe that God advises us on what the laws are, and it's up to us to use our agency to choose to abide by certain laws. But they're not laws that God has any control over. People think, oh, well, God should just change his mind. It's like he can't. In my perspective, the way I believe in God, he can't. He is bound by law the same as we are. He is there to help us, guide us, lead us, help us understand these laws, and to give us the most effective way to accomplish success inside of these laws. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. But it's not that he is actually creating law. He might change policy. He might change whatever he decides, right? The New Testament versus the Old Testament versus what we're doing now. All of them are very different, but that changes with time. But just think about, you cannot break the law. I know I spend a lot of time on this, but I think it's one of the biggest topics for people to just get through their head, that when you start to understand that all of your unhappiness is predicated on you not knowing how to use natural laws, then that's where most of your happiness is either not coming from or coming from. Then you have a choice. You're now aware and you're able to choose to start to use laws for your favor, or you could just choose not to, which is fine. Just recognize that the laws aren't changing. How you approach the law is what changes. Okay, so that's one thing. And then to kind of lead into that, I've just used the word laws a ton. We're going to transition and almost synonymously use these laws as principles. Okay, so there's principles, and for me, and you can ask anybody that knows me, I believe myself to be a highly principled person. And what I mean by that is that when you are coming at me and you're saying, hey, why don't you do X, Y, or Z? I'm going to deduce it down to the principle that I'm being asked to abide by. And then I'm going to say, okay, can I abide by that principle in my family life, in my home life, in my church life, in my fitness life? Can I abide by that principle everywhere? If I can, then I will adopt it. And if I believe I can, then I will adopt it and I will start applying it everywhere. If at any point in time that principle becomes no longer efficient for me to live my life by, I'm probably going to get rid of the principle. A true principle or a natural law is something that universally is true everywhere. Okay, so principles can be one thing, and the principles never change, in my opinion. The practices, how we apply those principles in our lives, those change. Those change as often as you need them to change so that you can stay in alignment with the principle. So from whether that's a religious perspective or a fitness perspective, a business perspective, right? The principle is, if you don't add value to your clients, they're not going to return value in a monetary form for any sustained period of time. Now, you might be able to Ponzi scheme somebody. You might be able to lie to them and get them to give you money. But as soon as you get found out, it's gone. So the principle of adding real value to obtain value is a fact. Now, how you do that? Well, that depends on what type of value you feel you can add as a parent, as a coach, as a mentor, as a child, right? What value can you add? And based on what value you can add, influences what type of value you're going to return. And those are small practices. Those practices can change, but the actual principle of what's being taught, or the principle of what we're trying to accomplish, that doesn't change, because that's a natural law. It's not going to change. So when it comes to relationships, okay, there's a difference between independent versus interdependent. Okay, very, very important distinctions. Independent people are those who are truly making their own choices and living their life on their terms. However, the problem with being completely independent, the thing that everybody's striving for, is that you've given complete disregard for other people. And just as habit number number 6 is to synergize, right? A truly independent person has no desire, is not looking for any type of synergization. They're not looking for any type of involvement in somebody else's life. They're purely focused on how can I do what's best for me all the time. They're not looking for a win-win situation. They're just crushing their own thing, and that's all they're doing. So an independent person really is living their life very solo and not involved with other people. Okay? And there's no collaboration, and thus they're struggling because they can only accomplish so much. An interdependent person, they're actually free to choose more things because they don't have an aversion to allowing somebody else to cooperate with them. See, an independent person has an aversion. They're a rebel almost. They don't want other people's help. They're so independent. This is your 2-year-old who just wants to change his own clothes, who just wants to go to the bathroom all by himself and wipe his own butt. Your 2-year-old who just wants to feed himself even though he's going to make a mess. It doesn't matter. He's establishing his independence. Now, independence is a necessary step for interdependence. But just so we're clear here, interdependent and codependent are very, very different things. A codependent absolutely relies on somebody else for their happiness. They're like a leech, a suckerfish, and they're so codependent on something else. You might find a good thing would be somebody who's codependent on pornography, codependent on drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, even codependent on love or some type of personality, right? These people, they're codependent. They need this to survive, okay? That is a very, in my opinion, a less serving personality to embody, okay? So there's that. There's codependent. Then there's independent, right? You don't need anybody else. And then there's interdependent. I think interdependent is a higher law of working with people. And with these people, they're finally free to choose to involve themselves with other people in their lives and to enhance their abilities and skills. They learn a lot of collaboration. You're going to find these people who are truly interdependent. They're always collaborating. They're very confident in their own right as individuals, but they're always involving other people. They aren't seeking for that glory because they feel that the glory comes in the team. They know that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. And you might be thinking, what? How does 1 + 1 not equal 2? 1 + 1 could equal 3 or more. It's a quality thing, right? That the 1 + 1 is now you can do much more work. You can do the work of 3 people just because now you're collaborating and you're happy. You can maneuver things you weren't able to maneuver before. You can think of things. You can accomplish different goals that you couldn't have accomplished yourself, but really enhance your ability to accomplish things. And so the difference between independent and interdependent are just very, very big there. And we want to make sure that there's a clear distinction between those two. Because it's all going to feed into here. I'm building this up to really habit number 2 of beginning with the end in mind. So I'm trying to build this up. So the last thing we need to focus on here is the golden egg philosophy. Okay, so in here he calls it the equation of P plus PC. So production plus production capability. Okay, and so understanding that there's a difference between production and production capability is really, really important because it really defines what we're able to do, right? The production aspect is the golden egg. The actual egg is the production, what actually was produced. Okay, the work that you do, the kids that you raise, that's like what actually is produced. And I see this with mothers all the time. And it's unfortunate, right? I see it with myself sometimes. I just work. And I see the production and I think, oh yeah, I'm just killing it. I'm getting all this production done. But I forget to take care of what's producing. I forget to take care of myself. These women, mothers, you forget to take care of yourselves. You aren't focusing on what you need, your identity, what makes you happy. You're just focusing on purely just the kids. And then sometimes, not everybody, some people really, they get their fulfillment from being mothers, and I'm not slamming them at all. But there's a lot of people who honestly, they feel like they're lost their identity when they became mothers. They begin lying to themselves because that's what they think the culture around them is telling them they should be doing. And they say, oh no, all I want to be is a mother. And this is all, but really they start getting more and more dissatisfied. They get more and more depressed. They get more and more detached from who they are because they've stopped caring for the thing that's actually producing. And so then their production capability is going down, and they're not able to care for their kids as well. They're not able to produce the income for their family with fathers. They're not able to focus at work anymore. So the production capability actually decreases when you focus more and more and more on production. However, if you say, okay, well, I mean, the story of the golden goose, right, is that you had a golden egg and it kept pooping or laying golden eggs, and the owner of the goose that was laying golden eggs was like, man, this is awesome. I just want a bunch of this really quick. And so they went and killed the duck or whatever it was, cut it open to get more of these golden eggs, and it turns out there's nothing there. Because it wasn't that the goose had all these golden eggs just sitting there and was laying one a day. It was more that as you take care of this goose, it has the ability to produce golden eggs. And so you have to think about yourself, okay, what is the production that I'm doing? What would enhance my production capabilities? Okay, what would increase my production capabilities? And so this is why this is so important when we're starting to talk about now fueling your legacy or fuel your legacy. What habits, mindsets, and behaviors are we going to implement to fuel our legacy? And with this one specifically, beginning with the end in mind. I talk to a lot of people of all ages. And one of my personal missions, you could say, is to help people begin with the end in mind. Start thinking about, hey, what do you want your legacy to be? Not today, not when you die, but in 6 generations from now. If you pay attention, the last question I ask on every guest interview is, okay, now you're dead. And in 6 generations from now it's your great, 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 great grandchildren are talking about you. They're sitting around the table and they're talking about you. What do you want them to be saying? Okay, I want you to be thinking about, what do you want the message? What do you want the end of your life? What do you want your legacy to be now, so that you can start intentionally placing the habits, mindsets, and behaviors, intentionally creating that legacy today, not waiting. And then now you're 65, 70 years old and you're looking back and you're like, hey, I wonder what people are going to remember me by. No, don't do that to yourself. Don't leave your life up to chance. Be intentional with it. Be creating that joy, that happiness that comes from inside of knowing that you created something. I sincerely believe that the purpose of this earth, the purpose that I'm here on this planet, is to learn to be a master creator, to be able to create my existence every day, how I think, how I see things, how I believe, how I act, how I share my love, how I care for others, right? All those things, that's for me to intentionally create. And the any point in time where I'm reacting to somebody else's creation, I'm no longer creating. Anytime I'm stepping into victimhood, anytime I'm stepping into the idea that somebody did something to me, I'm absolving myself from the ability to respond or my responsibility. And I refuse to do that. I accept full responsibility. I reserve the right and the ability to respond in any situation that I choose to be in. And because of that, it awards me an immense amount of happiness, peace, confidence, joy, love in my life. And that's what I want for you guys. That's what I want to be able to share with you guys, is the ability to create. But it's really difficult if you're not beginning with the end in mind. When you got married, did you think, okay, this is the type of wife or spouse rather that I'm looking for? This is exactly the qualities that I want them to have. Now, some people make fun of this. They think, oh, it's just hyped up a list of things that you have to have before you're going to get married. You're never going to find this golden goose, and you're never going to actually get married because you're too choosy. And I would disagree with those people, right? I think if you are creating yourself and you're creating yourself as somebody worthy of being paired with that other individual, you're going to find somebody who maybe right when you find them, they don't have all those qualities, but they're going to be willing to mold into those qualities purely because they understand and they love you and they know what can be possible if, okay? And so just understand that's a huge, huge, huge thing to really get inside of yourself, to begin with the end in mind. When you go to bed, are you already programming how you're going to wake up in the morning? Are you already programming what your morning schedule is going to be? Are you already programming how the outcome of your next day is going to be? Are you programming how the outcome of your next week is going to be, and your next month and your next year, right? Are you consciously thinking about this? I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and the guest was, she's a world, I think she holds the world record. If she doesn't hold it, then she won it once. But world champion of barrel racing, okay? And then a week before that, I listened to a podcast with a guy named Shaun White, who is the Olympian. He's won world titles in skateboarding and in snowboarding, right? And when you're hearing about how these people prepare for success, whether it's Michael Jordan, I mean, all these people, anybody who's truly successful, what they prepare for is they prepare for them celebrating. They're already beginning. Before they ever step on stage, they're already thinking about how they're going to celebrate when they kill it, after they win. Right? They're so forward thinking. They're already preparing all of their everything in advance for that. And that is something we need to do better at in our lives. We hear these stories and we think, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Michael Jordan, he visualized himself making the perfect shot. This person visualizes herself winning and doing the perfect run, right? So they're all visualizing themselves. That's cool, right? Why are we not intentionally applying that into our family life? Why are we not intentionally visualizing, hey, this is how I'm going to respond to my kids today. This is the type of love that I'm going to show my kids today. This is the type of food that I'm going to feed my kids today. This is the type of health that I'm going to perform for myself today, right? We've got to visualize this because this is a principle, okay? This principle of visualization of ultimate desire, having a vision and going for something. This is a principle that is absolutely natural. Look at it in any religious context. Look at it in any business context. If you never believed and created, if let's say Steve Jobs, if he never had a vision for what Apple could become, if he never had a vision of what might be if you were to build the iPhone or how it would serve families or the feelings that people would get from it, if he never had a vision of that, he would have never accomplished what he accomplished. And so having a vision, beginning with the end in mind, is so important. And that is why when we're talking about legacy, we've got to begin with the end in mind. We've got to really get out there and share that with other people. Now, what's interesting is when it comes to collaboration, I believe that if your goal is so small that you can accomplish it all by yourself, then it's not a very good goal, right? My goals, I'm pretty sure I talked to you about these on our podcast before, but I'm going to go over them again. I believe in SMART goals, believe me, but I've changed what the acronym of SMART goals means because I want my legacy to be so big that I have to enlist other people. I have to bring other people with me so that we can all have the joy and the love and that all of that with this experience. Okay, so my SMART goals. One is sexy, man. This thing has to be so sexy that it engulfs people's minds and they can't stop thinking about it. When they close their eyes, they see it. When I close my eyes, I see it, right? That's how sexy this legacy has to be. This thing needs to be massive. It needs to be so massive that you cannot accomplish it by yourself. You need help to accomplish your goal. Maybe that's to raise a family. Maybe that's to get married. Maybe that's to build a company. Maybe that's to become a world-renowned author, therapist, whatever it is, golfer, track runner, go to the Olympics in archery, whatever it is. You've got to have a goal so massive that you have to enlist other people. For me, one of my goals is to speak in front of 100,000 people in the Georgia Dome. For me to do that, man, I'm going to have to enlist a massive, massive, massive team. Speech coaches, travel, people who are actually going to show up, the 100,000 people who are going to show up to listen to me speak, right? I've got to make sure that they all believe in what I'm doing enough to actually show up. And so learning how to create a massive enough dream that it attracts people. And so it's sexy enough that people are attracted to it. It's massive enough that they understand that they're going to contribute and that I need them to contribute for me to accomplish my goal. And then lastly, is it remarkable? When we accomplish this goal, is anybody going to know, right? So Stephen R. Covey, he wrote this book. Guess how many people have heard of this book? Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have read his book. So it was remarkable. People talked about it. Once they read it, they talked about it to their friends because it was so good. Just like I'm talking about it to you because it's such a good book. Okay, so is it remarkable? The last two, right? I actually mixed up the R. A is supposed to come before the R. So is audacious. Audacious is really, really important as well. So audacious is creating separation. Have you created separation with your goal? Once it's massive enough, are there people who like your goal and not like your goal? I just spent about an hour and a half speaking with my speech coach. And we're going over my speech, and we're trying to figure out how can we whittle down some pieces and expand other pieces. And the one question I have in my mind the whole time, and we talk about this, is how can I create more separation? How can I make sure that I'm specifically talking to the people that I want to talk to, and I'm not talking to everybody else? So I'm creating more separation so that when somebody's done listening to me speak, they're walking out there. I either don't like Sam, never want to talk to him again. I like Sam. He's a pretty okay guy. I know Sam. I believe and trust him, and he has something I have. I would die for Sam, right? And so I need people to create separation. I need to be able to talk to each individual at their own level and where they're at. And so creating separation, my goals have to be so audacious, so I want to say flashy, but just so good at separating the wheat from the chaff, the people who I want from the people that I don't want, that it's actually going to create that. So that's why audacious is there. Then there's R for remarkable. And then last is transparent. Okay. So you actually have to share it. And that's what's so cool about what Covey did with this book is he shared his book with the world. He shared what his thoughts were up in his mind, and he shared it with everybody. He shared so everybody can now have that light and truth in their life. And for your legacy, nobody's going to remember you if you don't share it. And nobody's going to remember you if you stick your head up and say, hey, I'm going for this. And then as you go for it, you're enlisting people along the way. And some people are saying, why are you going for that? That's a terrible thing. That's the audacious part. It's remarkable, right? These people who don't like you, they're going to go tell their friends, hey, look at this guy. He's going for some stupid goal. He's going to go be a mom, or she's going to go be a mom, and she's going to have 10 kids or whatever, right? It's going to create separation. People are going to start heckling you for it. And you should have welcomed that with just, I planned on this. I begin with the end in mind. I know that by virtue of what I'm saying, even right now, people are going to turn this podcast off before they finish it because they're like, Sam, he's too intense. He's too high energy. He's too much for me. And that's okay. I respect that. I love that. And by the way, I'm doing it to you on purpose. I want to create separation. I want people to say, I either agree or I don't agree. If you're just kind of that doesn't serve me. But if you say, I disagree with Sam or I agree with Sam, that's where I want you. I want you to make a decision about what you believe. So transparency is really, really, really what I'm chasing. I'm sharing everything I believe. I'm sharing all these opinions with everybody to hear feedback, to get feedback. And as I'm chasing my goal, I've had people who are totally in support of me, and they're watching me and they're supporting me. They're helping me. They're giving me resources to chase down my goals and my dreams. Then I have other people, some people who are closer to me, some people who are farther away, who they're like, oh, that's stupid. Why are you doing that? Why are you spending so much time at work? Why are you wasting your time on a family vacation, sitting with family? I mean, sitting and working and earning money. Like, why are you doing these things? And those people, they're pulling from me rather than adding to me. And so I'm intentionally creating those because I want the transparency. I want to know who's on my team and who's not on my team. And so you need to share your dream, your legacy, your identity. You need to share that with other people, create a space of vulnerability so you can actually create a legacy of your dreams. And so this whole episode today has been really focused on what are the key elements of creating a meaningful legacy. And absolutely, I think habit number 2 has to start with there when you're creating legacy, and that is begin with the end in mind. If you're just going out haphazardly doing stuff, you're not going to have the legacy of your dreams. So begin with the end in mind, draw it out on paper, look at the house, look at whatever you want, your cars, get a vision board, and begin with the end in mind. I know you're going to be satisfied, and I'm just super, super excited for you to begin this journey of beginning with the end in mind. It's going to change your life. And I'm grateful for you participating in the Fuel Your Legacy Nation. If you'd like to comment and go read this book and then find out what things you've learned from it and what things other people have learned from it, go to my Facebook page, Sam Knickerbocker, go to my business page, and then in the group, and you could probably just search this actually, Fuel Your Legacy Reading Group. If you go there, then you can participate in the conversation about what other people have gotten from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and how they in their life have been able to implement different principles, what things stick out to them the most, what things that they kind of just glossed over. But the beauty of that is we can actually collaborate, which is number 6, synergize, and we can create a movement of people who really want to excel and become better. And that is where the rubber hits the road, where your dream actually catches traction and you're ready to move forward. So we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.